What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to have somewhat of a different conversation, and I do know I say that a lot, but this one truly is different. I've had these notes in my computer for a while now. I look at them frequently, and honestly, I've tried to kind of stay away from this conversation. But I did want to share some thoughts on this. So here we go. Before we jump in, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the alert notification bell. Consider joining our community either through Patreon, YouTube, or Discord. Consider volunteering, consider financially supporting, and check out the merch. Excuse me. All right, so I think I hit everything that I kind of needed to hit. This conversation is political. I'll start there. In the sense that I want to talk about two things that I've noticed to be common in U.S. politics. Like every 4 years, I kind of see these things, and that's fear mongering and leapfrogging. And in my mind, these two things are highly correlated. Now, one of the reasons that I did not, or one of the reasons that I was hesitant about having this particular conversation, is because politics are they're not just. It's not just that politics are very complex. It's not just that politics are very personal, but it's also that politics are very triggering. Um, Hence the fear mongering, right? So this can become very polarizing, as we will see. And it's not that I necessarily want to address those things. I specifically want to address the fear mongering and the leapfrogging, and show how perhaps we can take some different approaches here. And so I am going to try to choose my words carefully here, because I do understand that these things are highly nuanced. But every election cycle that I've been a part of, that I've been privy to, political parties in the U.S. deploy fear-mongering tactics that lead well-intentioned citizens to leapfrog past actionable local opportunities, often becoming obsessed with issues like, I don't know, Pizzagate or Hunter Biden's laptops. And of course, this ends up diverting attention from more immediate, impactful ways that they can contribute to their communities. And that's really my primary concern. I am not in this video attempting to address the validity of such arguments. There is real reason to be concerned about Project 2025. There is real reason to be concerned about Biden's age. And if that's the case, we should also have that concern about the other fella, which is something that I've been calling out for a while now. But again, not my goal here is not necessary to address, acknowledge, or interrogate or investigate the validity of those ideologies, or what we need to be doing about them. Instead, I want to highlight the two things that I said: fear mongering and leapfrogging. So, and just kind of in this introduction, I think, or at least I hope, I've already kind of given you a little insight into why I may feel these things are problematic. Um, okay, let's just. The biggest issue is for me is that it does distract from local issues, and when I say distract from local issues, not necessarily saying issues that are isolated to a locality, but I am saying issues that are present locally that are preventing, individuals from actually playing a very necessary part in politics. For example, if we are concerned about what the other party is doing, which I find to be just that type of language right there is problematic for democracy for just tons of reasons. But if there is a issue that is going to be prevalent in my society, something that I'm concerned of, let's use the fear mongering. Someone has told me I have a reason to be feared, because to be afraid, because if this happens, then everything falls apart. Now, the math is, if this one thing happens and then everything falls apart, then everything has already fallen apart. That's a part of the disingenuousness of the conversation that I don't like. Democracy is not preserved by votes alone. If someone if just by not voting or voting, everything in the country falls apart, then the democracy had already fallen apart. And I think that actually needs to be a part of the conversation. But the reasons these things happen, where we get to these places where we're at such extremes, where there is this idea that nope, if these people get in power, done everything is done. The only way that could be possibly true is that if people were so disengaged from their local communities and local politics that they hadn't built an infrastructure to preserve freedom and democracy. And I am kind of saying that that's kind of the problem. Um, both of the parties, and I say both as if there's only two, but political parties in America, for the most part, vie for the vote. That's what the biggest conversation becomes. The conversation becomes voting. Me personally, I got disillusioned with the Democratic Party, uh, probably decades ago by this moment, because I noticed that I only heard from my Democratic politicians, whether they were running for Congress or running for president. I only heard from them. I only heard from party representatives every 4 years or every time there was an election cycle, as opposed to them actually. And I'm not saying all, because there are some great Democratic uh, community activists out there that are doing the work. But by far and large, in the places that I've lived, which spans more than 3 states and several cities, the Democratic wasn't doing what it needed to be doing. Democratic Party wasn't doing what it needed to be doing in between election cycles to make sure that their base is educated on how the political process works and how to be involved in between the election cycle. And of course, that's my biggest problem with fear mongering and leapfrogging, is that it doesn't address, nor does it give room to address the problems that could easily or more easily be solved by individuals in their locale, ultimately allowing us to build stronger networks of support. It really just becomes almost like a he said, she said, or this is the bad guy, and we're the not so bad guys, which just doesn't seem to be a holistic conversation when it comes to politics. And so we'll end up focusing on, sensational scandals, sensational ideas. We will spend an entire election cycle telling you why this person is personally horrible or personally irreprehensible or personally unqualified or personally mentally declining, as someone might say, sundowning. We keep talking about the persons, but I'm trying to figure out where are the politics at. Where are the policies? Where are the plans? Don't tell me why this is this is why, in my opinion, right? My opinion. This is why our politics are all over the place, is because we spend more time talking about personalities than we actually do talking about policies. And even when we do talk about policies, we talk about policies either from a place of praise or a place of condemnation, not a place of interrogation or investigation. And in my opinion, that is irresponsible. That is irresponsible just to talk about the policies and say, hey, these are my policies, these are great, you should do these, and anybody who don't want to do these policies are evil. Or on the other end, to say, hey, these are the policies they have and these policies are bad, and anybody who supports those policies are evil. This is not how you have a healthy conversation. It would be best to investigate those policies, to highlight those policies, break those things down. And we may say, well, as a country, we don't have the attention span for that. I would just literally say, well, whose fucking fault is that? How do we fix the problem? You see? Because at the end of the day, in my humble opinion, I say humble lightly, but in my humble opinion, this is an education problem. This is an education problem. And doesn't fear mongering can be absolutely devastating to those who don't have an informed mind and an informed way of thinking. So I know a lot of us are trying to do our best to bring awareness to Project 2025. And I would like for us to be mindful about the amount of publicity that we're giving this, because it's like you're assuming, your assumption is that if enough people know about this, they're going to say, oh, this is insane. I don't share that assumption. I think there were people yesterday who did not know about it, and they do today. And I think some of those people are gonna look at that stuff, and I'm just saying this based off of the amount of conversations that I've been in, and I think some of those people are gonna look at that stuff and say, "Well, you know what? As a Christian, I think I stand by this." That no, no, no. I know that's a little rabbit trail, but it's a thought for me. It's a thought for me. And again, even that can be fear mongering that leads to leapfrogging, you know. Um, and one and basically leapfrogging is jumping over the things that I can actually do, that I can actually impact, that I can actually make a difference, and becoming obsessed with something that I have a minimal uh probability of impact. And it's not that I'm saying people shouldn't be concerned about things that they don't have a minimal that they only have a minimal probability of impacting. What I am saying is, why would you skip over the things that you have a maximum probability of impacting? Because and again, this is kind of like a connected issue for me because if we are doing the things that we can do, it puts us in a better position to do the things that we need to do. But if we keep on overlooking, local community activism, local community advocacy, local community projects and programs that strengthen democracy, then the federal or the national democracy is always going to be in trouble. It's always going to be at risk because I don't wanna say no one, but just a smaller group are actually doing the groundwork. This is also one of the reasons that I'm advocate of building secular communities, alright? One of the reasons that Christian nationalism is on a rise is because Christian nationalism has a weekly curriculum that includes Sundays and Wednesdays in most churches. So there are these huge buildings that people are going into routinely, weekly and Sundays, and hearing these messages over and over again, being reaffirmed, if you will, in their faith, being reaffirmed in their belief that their God is the King of Kings and that all kings should have to bow down to the rules of their gods. There is no Christian who actually believes in the Bible that the Bible is the word of God who believes in the freedom of religion. They'll say those words to be polite, but that's not what they believe. You cannot believe that your God is going to punish people who don't share your religion while also believing in the freedom of religion. And so the more people who read about things that are Christian nationalists, well, guess what? If they're Christian, they are likely to feel like, "Oh, finally, I'm getting my country back." And we have to start asking ourselves, "Okay, now what are we doing about that, though?" Because, like, they have, field missions. Again, every Sunday, every Wednesday for most churches. They're reinforcing their messages. They're getting their messages out there. What are we doing? Again, this is why I advocate for community because Imma be absolutely honest with you, in the majority of the atheist circles that I'm seeing, the big wazoo just seems to be to get free from religion and have fun. And I'm like, it has to be something greater than that, right? I'm not saying it has to be, but for me it is. I didn't get free from religion just to hang out and watch the world fall apart around me. I got free from religion because I realized that working in religion wasn't actually helping the world, and I actually want to be helping the world. And of course, in order for me to do that, I have to start with the city and the town that I live in, and of course, the country that I live in. And that's why, as reluctant as I was to kind of have this conversation, I'm having it anyway. When people leapfrog, then resources that could be going to local issues end up getting misallocated to sensationalize national issues. So local needs get overlooked. We end up pushing these huge national political campaigns and voting for those because we get so caught up in our fear. And I'm not saying that we should not be funding, political campaigns. That's a whole nother other conversation. But I am saying when I think about the amount of money we waste every 4 years to solve problems that we're not actually trying to solve. Because I think that's the insidiousness of what has happened in this country is that we think for many of us, not all of us, not all of you, and I don't want to put anybody in a box, but for many of us, we have absolutely accepted the idea of voting in substitute for daily cooperative action. And it's just like, no, voting should be the cherry on the top. It is not a one and done, nor could it ever be, you know? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Um, and then, I think if we're concerned, if we're really concerned about people and we really do understand how bad things are, do you really think fear mongering is gonna help with the amount of anxiety and depression that people are dealing with? Why, instead of pointing to the problems over and over again, have we not learned how to point to the solutions unless we cannot find them? And if we cannot find the solutions, doesn't that mean that we're not working together well enough to look for them? And how do we have the audacity to be so upset about the problems if we're not actually working on the solutions? Now, this is just me spitballing here. This is me rabbit trailing thinking, giving you a little bit of insight into my mind, but these are the things that I think about. These are the things that, for the most part, has made me want to absolutely be politically apathetic because I don't have respect for either of the primary parties in this country. I do not. I do not. That's just me. I'm not saying you can't, but you won't change my mind for the same reason you won't make me believe in God. I lived the experience. Hmm. Yeah, if we actually care about people, we need to think twice about our fear mongering tactics. We need to think twice about that. I'm not saying don't call out the problems. I'm just saying it's on the only healthy way to actually engage this is to call out the problems along with the solutions, or to call out the problems as an appeal to find the solutions. Otherwise, we're just telling everybody to be scared. Don't do anything about it, which again, I find to be not only do I find it to be disingenuous and insidious, I find that to be punkish. And that's just me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't care who voted and who didn't vote. Project 2025 will not be impacting me. I want you to understand that. That's a choice that we all have to make. You can make the choice to live with other people's foolishness or not. I believe it was Patrick Henry, may have the name wrong, but I believe the quote was give me liberty or give me death. Those are really the choices. Those are the choices, you know? Thankfully, we've become a little more sophisticated since then, and so we can have conversation, but that always needs to be the choice. That I will never settle for anything less than liberty. That if you want to put me in a box of anything that is less than liberty, you're gonna have to kill me to get me in there. That's it. Local communities suffer. Local communities suffer at the expense of national or distant political dick measuring contest. Through all of this, the local communities still don't get better education. You know, through all of this, there are still people in their communities who do not feel safe. We are in the midst of another technological revolution, and more than 70% of our communities will be left out. Several of the jobs that many people are struggling to maintain today will not even exist tomorrow. Further, further exasperating their conditions. These are things that can't be solved from a federal election. There's nothing that can happen on the federal level that can solve those problems. I won't say nothing, but it's highly unlikely that it's going to happen. And that's the illusion. That's the illusion that unhealthy and disingenuous political parties throw people into every 4 years. That if you vote for me, you know, I can stop the other guy. And it's like, we'd have to be deceived to think that because the other guy isn't just another guy. The other guy is a reflection of other people that we share this country with. We can't keep fighting each other, you know? Like, I thought we were beyond this, but I think this is we failed to really understand the power of community. We failed to utilize it properly. Fearmongering allows the rampant spread of superstitious beliefs, leading to irrational decisions. Some people are gonna make decisions one way or another because of pressure, because someone told them that you're not a good person if you don't vote for my candidate. That should be deplorable, you know? Like, yikes, man. We're gonna get every time this happens, there's more and more conspiracy theories. This was something that I was very disappointed with, during the COVID pandemic. I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any stretch of the imagination, but I was horribly disappointed with, the communication during that time. I was disappointed at the dehumanization of people who were uncomfortable with the vaccines. I was super, super, disappointed with that. It's possible to say something is the best thing to do without calling people stupid and calling people names who don't come to that agreement yet. You're not gonna help them come to that agreement by doing that. And just by the way, anytime that we're telling people to trust the science, we should spend more time talking about the science than the scientists. Otherwise, we're just trusting that the people will trust our appeal to authority, which is a logical fallacy. We didn't in my opinion, and I'm sure there were some things that tried, but obviously here we're just talking about what was up front, is that it was fear-mongering, which led to leapfrog, you know? "Do this or you're gonna die." That's fear-mongering, which then emboldened people who didn't do it and didn't die with anecdotal testimony, which I don't consider as evidence, because now they can say, "Well, here's this other person who took it and they died." You've opened the floodgate for anecdotal conversation when this conversation was supposed to be about the science, and that's where it should have remained. That should have been the conversation. We could have put up panels of several scientists talking together, discussing the science together. I'm not saying it would have made a hell of a difference. I'm just saying I did not like the way that it was done. I didn't like the way that we handled it as a country. I didn't see enough compassion. I didn't see enough consideration, you know? And I think this comes from years and years of repeated finger pointing, you know? Of course, this types of things gives media and politicians the ability to manipulate public opinion and behavior, which we've often seen with people do when people use the fear mongering of immigration. You know, somebody's coming to take my black jobs. Apparently, I didn't watch the debate, so I know the context that that was used in, but I've seen it in a bunch of memes. Um, I was going to tell you why I didn't watch the debate, but that's a whole nother conversation. Um, you know, mongering also, and excuse me for bringing this aspect up, but fear mongering also causes market instability and reduces consumer confidence. For a country like ours that is capitalist at this moment, that can be really bad. you know. And then, an overemphasis on threats can lead to civic disengagement and reduce community involvement. And so then the very thing that we need to actually fight some of these threats doesn't happen because people are like, "What's the use? Why should I do anything if this is going on? I need to and it's just like, "Oh, man." And I know this one is also a fine line to toe because most of you, from I don't wanna say most of you, but a lot of people want an enemy. I don't want an enemy. I don't need an enemy. Even if someone has a worldview that is vehemently opposed to mine, they are not my enemy. They are somebody else having an experience, and I wanna do everything I can to make sure their experience has no impact on my life. But at the same time, I have no impact I have no reason to want to necessarily make their lives miserable, you know, um, and far and large. Uh, Fear-mongering creates divisions within communities, you know, pitting groups against each other, families against each other. Again, we talk about this in our Sunday sessions that we have to be really careful, with labels, making sure to realize that making sure to realize that labels only tell you a very small part about who a person is. It doesn't tell you everything, you know? Everybody who likes country music does not like all the same country music singers, you know? Everybody who likes hip hop doesn't like all the same rappers, and I would hope that we learn how to give each other that grace. There are some people who are identifying with things just because they share the label. It's only our humane and civil conversations with each other that are gonna help us work through the depths of those labels, and possibly find, I don't necessarily wanna use the word common ground, but something close to it, you know? If not, we're just kinda using the same weapons against each other, you know? You say, "Oh, anybody who's a Republican is this, or anybody who's a Democrat is this, or anybody who's leftist is this, or anybody who's rightist is this." Well, that's just like saying, "Well, anybody who's atheist is this." You don't know people that you don't know. Point blank period. Knowing who they voted for gave you no insight into who they are, or why they voted that way, or what their motivation was, or what they knew or didn't know. At the end of the day, I think this is I say I've already said an education problem, but I like to add the addendum of a knowledge problem as well. Not just in the sense, because you might say, "Well, how is education different than knowledge?" Well, education, in my opinion, in layman's terms, is the process of knowing. It's the process of understanding. Yeah, education is the process of understanding. Knowledge is the knowledge you need to understand. Let me stop. Okay. Okay. So what I like to ask kinda everybody to do, because and again, I hope you appreciate the type of compassion that I am trying to take with this subject, because when it comes to politics, I can be very harsh. My mentors, were Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, Nat Turner, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, you know, those type of things. So when it comes to politics, I can be, harsh. But in this case, it's not that I'm trying to aim for. I'm not trying to say, America sucks or America's great. I'm not trying to say the Democratic Party is horrible, or the Republican Party is great, or anything like that. In this one, what I'm asking is that as we're being exposed to so much politically, I'd ask you to consistently evaluate your focus. Regularly assess whether your attention and efforts are directed towards issues that you can realistically impact, or if your voice is being hijacked for somebody else. And understand, if that's happening, then the things that you could realistically impact are not being impacted. You know, um, the other one is just local engagement. Prioritize solving problems within your immediate community where you can see tangible results and where you can become a part of the solution. You know, es- again, I highlight these things to do not in absence of our national or federal focus, but in cooperation with, because we need it. And then, of course, this third thing is critical thinking. Develop and promote critical thinking skills to combat misinformation and superstition. Sharing memes that can be easily, demonstrated to be false or misguided or just to be away from the point altogether doesn't help progress, you know? But you could use those same memes as a way to promote critical thinking. You say, "Hey, this is a popular meme that's spreading. I did some research on it. This is what's accurate. This is what's not. This is how I did that research." These are muscles that we need to start exercising, and these are muscles that we need to start helping others exercise. Otherwise, we're in deep shit. And then resource management. Advocate for the efficient allocation of resources to ensure they're directed towards the most pressing and solvable issues, you know. And then I can't leave this one out. Community building, you know, foster strong local communities that can work together to address their own issues effectively and then cooperate to tackle national issues because that's where the strength is. That's where the strength is. Good politics should not settle for being the lesser evil. It should always aim to be the greater good. The true travesty of our national crisis is that party politics have so subverted democracy in this country that the people no longer have a true voice in their politicians or their policies. The parties do. We must strive for honesty in political discourse, resisting the temptation to engage in fear-mongering and sensationalism. This requires a collective effort to promote transparency, accountability, and integrity in our political system. We need to encourage politicians and citizens alike to focus on policies and actions that genuinely benefit society as a whole rather than advancing partisan agendas. We need to advocate for electoral reforms that empower individuals rather than parties, ensuring that the democratic process reflects the will of the people. Addressing leapfrogging and fear-mongering in U.S. elections requires a concerted effort to focus on local actionable issues, promoting rational thinking, and ensure resources are used effectively. By striving for honesty and healthy political conversation, we can make a more significant impact and support communities that need assistance. Good politics is about aiming for the greater good, not just being the lesser evil. Communities make a nation strong, not the other way around. If we truly want to make this country a great place, we need to stop overlooking the problems that are closest to us. This is how we end up with candidates that do not reflect our interests. The democratic process does not begin or end with voting. It is an everyday struggle towards liberty that must be sustained with intentional community cooperation. Hope I've said something that is of value, something that maybe helps you think, maybe helps you reframe your thoughts, maybe even gives you some ideas of how you can get immediately active where you are. And I will admit that getting active is not always intuitive, but starting the conversation is the easiest way. One thing that I encourage people to do, and this is just some advice from my former pastoring days, is actually take a tour of your city. You can just a driving tour by yourself, a walking tour, and look around. Pay attention. Nobody solves any problems until they start paying attention to people, and that's where it begins. You look around, you pay attention. Sit in a coffee shop, listen to the conversations. You know, hear what people are saying. Let's stop learning people vicariously through media. Let's remove that middleman and actually start talking to people, actually get in conversations. Some of the greatest education happens in conversations. All right, that's all I have for now. This one was a real, hard topic to talk about, but I hope I've said something of value. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, and I'd love to see your comments in the chat. And if you think conversations like these are helpful, make sure you share this video with someone. All right, that's all I have for now. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful. I'll holla.